Alright, hey guys, and welcome back to Spooky's House of Jump Scares. Today we're playing through room 600 to probably 700. We got a handy axe. Keep that ball pumping. We got a handy axe last time. Went through a kind of cabiny woods type area. Another lovely genre to explore. For those of you who don't know, Spooky Stuff with Jump Scares is a game, a game with relatively simple graphics. That's mostly a jump scare game. It's known for its cute little jump scares that pop out of the walls. But going through the game, we have explored a number of different genres of horror, and I have found that I enjoy it as like the cute little jump scares. We have some scary toast, or some displeased toast. Oh, Puppet Master! I haven't figured out the Puppet Master. Does the Puppet Master just want me to run? Sorry if anyone's squeamish. This is a thing it does. To become a puppet is to rid oneself of pain and harshness of choice. Now nothing you do is your fault. Now you belong to something. You belong to me. Game over. Alright, so we're back in room 600. Sorry for that waste of 2 minutes. I think maybe the rooms were just really short before, so I didn't have to figure out the Puppet Master's pattern. I think maybe you have to watch him, and he can only move when you're not watching him. Maybe? I'm not sure. Let's try that out. Ah, now we're dealing with the Japanese spirit. So it is semi-randomized. I think the Japanese spirit you just run away from. What I'm really hoping they don't do is I hope that the later levels aren't just alternating between the different horror types. Because as we saw with the Puppet Master, I haven't exactly figured out... I haven't exactly figured out some of the horror patterns. This old place is somehow even worse than the new GL labs, although it seems to have been constructed with a much larger budget than the new lab. Nothing works quite right. I can see why it was abandoned so quickly. I wonder if there really is anything worth salvaging. Okay, so now we're in a sci-fi-like environment. This facility is quite odd. Some of the equipment doesn't seem quite right, almost as if it were designed for people without hands. Also, I'm not sure if it's just faulty electronics, so the power keeps fluctuating when noises are coming from the air ducts. I mentioned this in another playthrough, but I really enjoy when games use. Spooky just said that there were things we need to salvage from this place. I'm starting to worry that a loose specimen may be included in the list of things for us to retrieve. The power just shut off again. Is everything broken in here? I mentioned previously in my Let's Play of Call of Juarez, I believe, at some point, that I like games that use a very small set of mechanics. You have to keep it close. It becomes something else when it gets too far away, something I can't outrun. Okay. So you can't move. Ah! Anyway, I was mentioning when I was playing Call of Juarez at some point that I really enjoy games that use a very limited and simple set of mechanics and then use those mechanics in interesting ways rather than adding a ton of other mechanics that almost very frequently end up being unpolished when you add a very large number of mechanics. For example, the Assassin's Creed games I mentioned, because after kind of the 2 series, it seems like they're just adding a lot of mechanics, a lot of which don't feel very fully refined. Ha. I don't know why it's spamming me with all of these. Death things. This is when I'm taking damage. Because the rule I have is that not to get too far away from it, and I'm not getting too far away from it. This is making traversing the levels quite slow. I'm wondering if that small black thing that we saw earlier was its form that is the something that the note lever said he can't outrun. And I'm full health again. Not sure how I feel about this guy. See, one of the weird things about this game is that by having save points every 100 levels, it does that super weird thing of it becomes predictable in the sense of for example, if all 6 or 66 remaining rooms in this before the next save point are all like this, it's going to be really slow and monotonous. So I have to assume at some point this stops. But by the same point, I've so slowly gone through this section of levels that it would be very frustrating and borderline unfair for me to have to go through all this stuff again. But since they only seem to have save points every 100 levels, that means that presumably at some point it's going to stop. And then there probably isn't going to be anything, because if there was, there'd be the chance of dying. And again, like, I've spent so long doing this thing, I really don't want to have to go back and do it all again. And so I'm having to be overly cautious. This is an interesting section, but it is one of the slower and more kind of boring sections. So, not a huge fan. Sorry for the slow episode, guys. This one's probably going to be a long one. And as soon as I say that, it ends. That's nice. I'm looking for this thing that we've been dealing with. No, if I don't see a listing for it, because this is the puppet guy, right? Yeah. Nope, yeah. Ah, that was good, because I haven't had one of those jump scares for a long time, so that was pretty effective. Oh, that was actually kind of a gross looking one. A ballroom? That guy's always good. Ooh, a mysterious sound. What's up with all these left, straights? Because we know it's not always that, because the very first one we did wasn't that. Paintings in a hallway? I don't think we've experienced that before. We've had paintings in rooms. Okay, so the jump scare sounds are changing. So how are your guys' springs going? I hope they're going well. I think mine's going pretty well. I was pretty busy around the Easter time period. But now I'm free. I'm trying to use the opportunity to start more productive hobbies. Whether or not this is a productive hobby, I was closing my eyes while gesturing there, so that was pretty underwhelming. See, now we have 30 rooms, and there can't really be anything that kills us, because especially after how slow the last however many rooms were, it'd be kind of dumb to have to go through all that again. So we're stuck with those jump scares, which are largely effective because I'm terrified of having to redo all that stuff again. Maybe I should use this opportunity to start talking about fears. We all have big fears, and knowing what they are is a good step to overcoming them. As I mentioned, with this spring, I'm trying to be more productive in my work habits. And that's involved taking on some additional hobbies. And one rule I try to always keep in mind is that fear is never a good enough reason to not do something. And that said, some people will likely go, That's ridiculous. Fears are perfectly reasonable reasons sometimes. For example, the fear of dying is a perfectly reasonable reason to not do something. And I counter that with no, it is not. The chance of, like, the realistic chance of dying is a good reason to not do something. Assuming that realistic chance is relatively high. The fear of dying isn't a good reason to not do something. Because, you know, we're afraid of dying in all sorts of dumb circumstances. And so I try to keep that in mind whenever I want to kind of put off something because I quote unquote don't feel like doing it. That if the only reason I don't feel like doing it is because I'm kind of afraid of how it might turn out, it's never a good enough reason. If there's actually another non-pure fear... What's that sound? Non-fear reason, I could consider it. But if it's just, I'm afraid something, you know, unrealistic might happen, then it's never a good enough reason. Again, that was moderately effective. I don't know if I visibly jumped, but changing up the sounds is pretty effective. See, my biggest fear probably that I encounter regularly is the fear of failure, which is why I generally didn't really like horror games, because dying feels like failure. Oh, is that a cute coffee cup? You haven't encountered one of those before. Keep a little pep in your step. Okay, so we've cleared room 600 to 700, and so that's why I'll end this episode. Sorry it was a long one because of that slow guy in the beginning. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time where we clear room 700 plus. See you then.